Hello, everyone. This is the Reverend, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about young Earth creationism and where creatures like Gorgonopsid fit in. Well, the thing is, creatures like Gorgonopsid are creatures known as mammal-like reptiles. Not mammals, not reptiles, something kind of in between. Here's the thing. When it comes to creationism, this is no real issue. Monotremes are no real issue. God created each of the kinds as they were. They're just a different kind of animal. They're not a mammal, they're not a reptile, they're just their own thing. When it comes to evolution, you've got to figure out, how did all these steps happen? How did all these beneficial mutations create these new creatures, which is something we have never seen? Most mutations are not beneficial. In fact, I can't think of one example of any beneficial mutation we have seen in modern day. Gorgonopsid and other mammal-like reptiles are just what they were. In fact, they would have been on the ark. So would dinosaurs. And you're thinking to yourself now, you're insane. How are you going to fit a Diplodocus, an Apatosaurus, or a Brachiosaurus on the ark? Well, here's the thing. You wouldn't need a Diplodocus and an Apatosaurus. There would have only been one of them, because they're the same basic kind of animal. They're sauropods, but at the same time, they fall into the same niche. They eat basically the same things, and they have the same body structure. They're the same kind of animal. Yeah, they're a different species, but they're the same kind. You would have a Brachiosaurus and, say, an Apatosaurus. What they don't tell you is baby dinosaurs were really small. And even after a whole year on the ark, they wouldn't have been any bigger than an adult rhino. So, not really a big deal. Plus, if God gave eggs rather than the baby dinosaurs, because God supplied the animals. So God could have just had an Apatosaurus and a Brachiosaurus lay 2 eggs each. God's capable of doing that. Noah picks them up, brings them into the ark, puts them in a bunch of hay and straw and stuff to incubate. That's no issue. Same thing with T-Rex, the small theropods, which would have been a different kind of animal. The bigger theropods and the smaller theropods had a lot of differences. So, you wouldn't need a bunch of huge theropods. There would have been just a few types, a few kinds. Maybe, say, Spinosaurid and a Tyrannosaurid. The different kinds of animals that had vastly different body plans. Because Spinosaurus and Tyrannosaurus are different enough that you can say they're a different kind of animal. Yeah, they're still theropods, but their head structure and everything else has changed enough, in my opinion, is different enough that they are different kinds. I may be wrong on that, but in my opinion, they're different kinds. Now, how many kinds of animals are there in total? Every animal that ever existed, there's probably between 15 and 30,000 kinds of animals. Now, the ark was large enough to hold over 100,000 sheep. In fact, it was closer to 150,000 sheep. If there are, let's go really, really high-end, and say there are 50,000 kinds of animals. That's 2 of each. for the most part. Some of them had 7, but most had 2. That's about 100,000 animals. Now, the ark could fit that many animals and the food. Now, let's say God gave eggs for all the reptiles. Just eggs. And let's say he gave eggs for the birds that were on the ark, too. Because, some of the birds don't fly. Let's say he gave eggs for those, too. That means that a lot of those would just be in one little room incubating. Now, God is completely capable of saying, yeah, you guys aren't hatching until after the flood. And bing, bang, boom, they don't hatch till after the flood. Now, this would stop a lot of issues because predators existed at this time. That's why some of the animals had 7. You notice it was the clean animals that had 7. So, if predators existed and they needed food, you start breeding real quick with the animals that have 7, and that food supply is working. Because, you only got one kind of big cat. You only got one kind of small cat. Rodents breed really fast. There's multiple kinds of rodents. That probably would have been a major food source for a little while. You can have 1 million rats in a year. And you can have like 1 million guinea pigs in a year. Just easy. It's exponential. The thing is, Gorgonopsid, the platypus, the echidna, they're different kinds of animals. Now, are platypus and echidna mammals by the classification of man? Yeah. Do I agree with that classification? Not really. I think they're their own kind of animal. I think platypus and echidnas are different kinds of animals. I think beavers and rats are different kinds of animals. I think rabbits and shrews are different kinds of animals. I think big cats and house cats are different kinds of animals. Now, they're close, but I don't think that a domesticated cat evolved into a tiger or vice versa, or something like that. I think the small cats are a different kind of animal to the big cats. Now, with dogs, I think there was one canid that the wolves, coyotes, dogs, dingoes, and dholes all came from. I think there was one type of canid that the foxes came from. I think creatures like hyenodonts and smilodon were on the ark. I think those are different kinds of animals. I do not think a smilodon is the same type or kind of animal as, say, a lion. Yeah, they're big cats, but I think smilodon is different enough to not be that same type of cat. I think the case might be made for lynxes as well. The 4 kinds of lynxes and similar animals like servals. I think they might have had a common ancestor, but I don't think we went from bananas to businessmen. I don't think we went from fish to fishermen. I don't think we went from bacteria to brainiacs. There's no convincing evidence for macroevolution. Now, there's a lot of convincing evidence. In fact, evidence that was convincing enough to make me go from hardcore militant atheist to Baptist preacher for the flood of Noah and biblical creation. Yeah, you heard that. I was an atheist. Evolution and its flaws are what led me to Jesus. Because evolution didn't make sense. I understood what they were teaching, but what they were teaching didn't have the evidence behind it. So I started doing research. And all of that research just led me down a rabbit hole to creationism, which led me to Christianity. Now, there for a while, I was a old Earth creationist, very short time while I was 16. That quickly moved to young Earth creationism. Because again, the evidence for an old Earth just isn't there. Now, when I say old Earth, I was thinking millions of years. You know, maybe the scientists are wrong. It's just millions of years old, because billions of years isn't possible with the evidence, not with the limiting factor. But then I came across carbon-14, and that drops down the age to thousands of years, because every expert on radiometric dating and radiometric isotopes agrees that the carbon-14 in our atmosphere should have reached equilibrium. That means it's being destroyed at the same rate it's being created within 30,000 years of the Earth's creation. It still hasn't. It's still increasing. It has not reached equilibrium, which means the Earth is less than 30,000 years old. And that's what kind of sent me down that hole to young Earth creationism. So just to kind of recap, the kinds of animals are different than the fake trees of life you will see that atheists and evolutionists put out.